Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
And
Hey, I'm Nick
I saw
Gambarian.
my mic's muted, so does that mean talk? I know how to internet.
We're killing it so far, everyone.
so far, everything is going great. I am Mike Forster. Apparently, Nick can't hear us. Nick, bark twice if you're in Southern California. That's great. Sounds good. All right, and Nick is actually.
Did that not work?
No, you were about 10 seconds behind. And
You
but
went slow
Emily
motion.
Swallow is here.
Okay,
And
so my
she's-
Wi-Fi.
This is going well. This is great. Emily, how much time do you have? We're gonna go ahead and troubleshoot this live on air.
Fantastic. Let's all get in there together.
Great.
Oh,
Good.
Nick just messaged Wi-Fi is not working, in case we couldn't tell.
Okay, we've got that. That's good. That's good.
Aw.
Is he technically now in the past or is he in the future? I think this is actually really fun for this. We'll just stay on Nick. You're a handsome guy.
Both.
We should
Yeah.
just debate that for the next hour.
Right.
Yeah,
I
let's get
complete-
really philosophical about
Yeah.
the speed of communication and stuff.
right. I love that.
So Emily Swallow, the armorer, returns to Thank the Maker. Thanks for being here. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
It's been not that long since you and I saw each other, I guess. When was that? New York Comic Con?
No, I've never done New York Comic Con.
What was the one when we were on Sonfield's boat?
That was what was it called? They only tried it once. It was the same team who does Rhode Island Comic Con.
Was it New Jersey?
It was in New Jersey. I don't remember what
Okay.
it was called though.
Okay.
But I think it's no more. I think it was a one and done.
Well, it's Jersey.
But it was fun. It got us together on a boat.
Yeah. An amazing, amazing night on a boat. Like,
Yeah.
We Sonfield took us around the Statue of Liberty and stuff. It was amazing.
Right.
It was kind of the perfect night.
Yeah. It was really cool.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we were talking earlier before we tried to get on the internet with this podcast about your stunt doubles in The Mandalorian, and one of them, Lauren Mary Kim, was on the boat as well with everyone.
She's amazing. She's also she doubled me in season 1 and made me look like the coolest person on the planet. And subsequent to that, she continues to try to make me look like the coolest person on the planet. Because during season 3, when I realized how dope all those fights looked, and I wanted to be able to do more of them, she trained me on her own time,
That's
out of
awesome.
the kindness and badassery of her heart.
I feel like first of all, the term stuntmen, antiquated, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Stunt performers, that's good, but stunt actors, I feel like, is just the obvious choice.
Yeah. I mean,
It should
isn't
switch to.
everyone like a multi-hyphenate these days?
Yeah.
right.
And I feel
right.
like that applies to stunt. And that just happened with I was at a convention with Barry.
Mhm.
And this was the first time we'd done a panel, just the two of us, I guess. And we never actually worked together on the show. He was never my Dinjarin. But we did an improv class together at the Groundlings, 10 years ago, prior to Mando. And I always have a ball with him, and we have done conventions together. Anyway, the whole reason I say this is because the person who had tried to do their research, who was introducing us on our panel beforehand, he was like, "So you're the stunt man, right?" And he was like, "No, because Lateef
Does stunts.
first ever Emmy for being the stunt man." He was
Right.
like, and Barry's an incredibly trained dancer and performer. He did Cirque du Soleil for years, so he could do
Right.
that. But like you said, he and Brendan, and they're acting the part. They are,
Character actors.
yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely want to get in and talk about all the nuance that we're dipping our toes into right now with acting, and you being a character who will likely never show their human face on screen
I kind of
is
hope
so-
not.
is
Yeah.
so interesting. So I want to get into that. But the main reason we brought you here tonight was to talk about LA Strikes Back, the charity fundraising initiative we have going to support people who are affected by the LA fires. You've been awesome and getting directly involved with us and helping lend a hand, not just with donations, but you're more actively involved. So we wanted to talk with you a bit about that,
Yeah.
and also
Well,
get your
thank you
perspective,
for-
being a person who lives out there and has had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I actually tomorrow I'm so glad it got extended because I have a little play date with Chris Bartlett, and we're making the helmet that we're gonna donate.
It's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Emily, from your perspective, and our producer Jason's on here. He's lives in Altadena. We've had a lot of people that are directly affected by this, not only in the fandom, but I know that there are so many people that worked in SoCal that were displaced.
Yeah.
We know that insurance is still the daily fight for most people. The devastation, I think, despite our short American attention spans, the devastation remains
Oh my gosh.
exactly as
Yeah.
we're left
It's
off.
still completely incomprehensible, and I mean, like right now it's raining, and now what we're dealing with is I'm part of there's a organization called the Topanga Coalition for Emergency Preparedness that tries to keep everyone, and it got so much tighter during the fires, and I'm
Right.
so grateful for our neighborhood network. But they're sending out alerts today about evacuation warnings because of landslides now.
Right.
And it's truly, I mean, I don't want to say ripple effect because that just sounds so pleasant. That sounds so nice. Like
Yeah.
the waves that just are going to continue crashing in and pounding people are that like you said, like there's a lot of people having issues with insurance. There's entire communities that have been, there are families whose their kids' schools burned down, their church or their synagogue burned down, the place where they used to go buy groceries, places where people worked, it's just gone. And
Right.
even for the people that have the financial means, perhaps to rebuild sooner than later, just the sheer amount of labor that's going to be needed and the lack of there's just not going to be enough people to do that. But it's also there's some of the red tape in terms of, we have so many regulations here in California, and thank goodness some of the red tape is being snipped.
Sure.
But it is, I know there's a group called Samaritan's Purse that's been helping with, they go in and if someone requests their services, they send in a team and they basically like sift through all the ash to try to recover some family heirlooms. And my husband and I went and helped out with that. And it was true. Like I would look at these houses on Google Maps before we went and see, this house on the street and these bushes and then looking at, like, you couldn't even tell, like, what room is this? And there was a family that had lived there for 39 years, and they were just trying to find, like, some, maybe some jewelry. And when we did find it, it was, like, so unrecognizable, but so exciting.
Right.
And this is just, like, the fact of people's lives now. Like, they're going to recover what they can. My understanding is that at the end of March, that whole area in the Palisades, they're going to bulldoze everything that's left so they can start rebuilding. But yeah, and I've also, I used to do a whole lot of work with the Surfrider Foundation. So I'm still a little bit, I pay attention to what's going on with like the ocean ecosystem, and they're saying, they don't really know the impact because they've never had an urban fire like this with so much that has gone into the ocean all at once. And the fires happened before it had really rained. And we have what's called the first flush, which is the first big rain of the season, when basically everything that's been like in storm drains and upstream comes out into the water. And it was just horrifying to see all of this, and all the stuff that we have in our modern lives now that doesn't break down easily,
carcinogenic, the PECs, and from a standpoint, I used to live in Vermont, and we got hit by Hurricane Sandy, and for a landlocked state, to see that devastation, our town was one of the towns that the state had decided to pull the reservoir because there was too much water. And you're talking within a matter of hours, the town is wiped off the map. And I know for so many people that can't really fathom that experience until you've truly been there, it is apocalyptic.
It really is.
In the nicest sense that we can describe that word, but I think we use that as hyperbole sometimes when we think of like a bad storm or something like that. But like I'm still shocked at when I see photos. Again, 3 months later, you're sitting here being like, this is unreal.
Yeah,
to see this,
and it's going to be unreal for a while, and that's also why I'm sort of glad, that this got pushed back a little bit, because the need for help is going to be ongoing. And there was such an incredible response at the beginning. And there still is, there were so many donations. One of the things that I'm always so grateful for in the face of this kind of devastation is that it wakes people up and they come together. I had just moved to New York for grad school when 9/11 happened. And it was a similar feeling of like, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you believe politically. You need help, I'm going to help you. That was the feeling that people had, and people came together, and it was I feel really lucky in a weird way that like I got to know the city at that time because it was incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, it is just going to be a challenge for a lot of people for a long time. And I know some people, like I have friends who were out in Altadena who were renting, and their place was okay. It wasn't burned, but it was so damaged by smoke and ash that like the building is unlivable. And now the rental market is crazy because of
so many people need houses. They're displaced.
Yeah. And so they're leaving the city. They're like, we can't really afford to stay here. And so, yeah, it's a seismic shift.
Yeah.
That's pretty much Jason, our friend and editor and producer's situation. That's pretty much his exact situation, being one of the only houses that survived in his immediate area. But like you said, because of smoke and debris and everything and all the crap that burned, it's completely toxic.
Yeah.
And there's no grid left, which I didn't think of immediately when he was filling us in. It's like, oh, there's also no power.
Right.
The water supply is shot. So even though the house is there and this whole other section of the neighborhood might be there, everyone's community is still destroyed, whether or not your house survived.
Right.
It's unreal. Apocalyptic is actually probably the most accurate word.
So LA Strikes Back, you can head over to lastrikesback.com, and you can the auction, I believe, is March 23rd. I'm just double checking that. I think that's correct because we moved it back, and that was because the outpouring of support from artists.
And have you been sorry, I haven't kept up with that account lately. Have you been posting pictures of some of the completed helmets?
Yeah.
It's incredible. And that's also why I'm just so inspired by what you're doing, because you're not just you are addressing a very practical need, but you're doing it in a way that gives people an opportunity to be creative. And I mean, some of the stuff that people are coming up with is just mind-blowing. It's really cool.
Yeah. And so I run a project called the Ornament Project, and that's where we have these holiday ornaments that we raised a bunch of money with the 501st this year for the Starlight Children's Foundation, and end up raising about $45,000. And for something like LA Strikes Back, because the awesome part about this is actually benefits 3 different charities, which is great because it's the Pasadena Humane Society, the World Central Kitchen, and the California Fire Fund. And so we're kind of taking the outpouring of support and making sure that it doesn't just go to one group, right? Because the need between people who are looking or displaced, the need is there everywhere, right? And so this kind of gives us a way for people to say, I want my money to go here. This is basically saying we're going to take all the support and we're going to divvy it up between 3 charities that, of course, that have been vetted and proven that the support is going where it needs to go.
Yeah, which is really important.
Exactly. And so a question that I wanted to ask you, Emily, because I know that you've done a million of these podcasts since Star Wars fans are the fans, but on a positive note of the fans, you have had the a solid career of a lot of great roles in a lot of different fandoms, a lot of different networks, and all of that. Between Supernatural and you've got Castlevania and SEAL Team and all these other these network shows. What is the thing about Star Wars fans that makes Star Wars fans the most unique fans, both in creativity and charity in the galaxy?
Well, I feel like Star Wars is sort of the myth of our time. It's like our modern mythology. The way like the Greeks had their Greek gods and all this. I don't know. There's something about Star Wars that feels like everyone can connect to it in such a larger than life way,
Right.
and in a way that like cuts right to your heart. And I think that is the reason that I think Star Wars itself has endured, is because it's super fun. It's, all these like space cowboys and stuff, but the core of it, the themes of it are so human and so, it's the hero's journey. And so I think that that's something that if you're into it, you can't help but connect on that level.
Mm-hmm.
And then because it has spanned now 40 plus years, we've got generations of people who are involved with it. And so then that in and of itself is a legacy. Which
Right.
one did you watch first? Which one's your favorite? Which is the like version of which arm of the universe do you relate to the most?
Sure.
And there's room for everybody. I mean, there are some very passionate debates, some very strong opinions, but for the most part, I also find the fans to be exceptionally kind and welcoming. And I feel like, and this is absolutely no disrespect to Supernatural, it's just a testament to how much bigger Star Wars is, because it's
Right.
been around longer and, has more people. But I sort of feel like Supernatural was a warm up for me to the Star Wars fandom. And that was, that was just like, I was so taken aback with the altruism and the community support and the way like people at those conventions wanted to, I don't know anything else about you, but I know that you really connect to this show on a heart level the way I do. And so we're in this together.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't expect that from conventions, because I had never gone to one as a fan. And that's to me is the most exciting part of it, because there's always an effort being made to improve the world. I mean, That's a very vague way of saying it, but it's true. And that's why I'm so excited every time I get to meet, like, I remember when I was first inducted into the 501st as an honorary member, and I was like, what? Who are you? What? I don't know. And now like I go look for the 501st and the Mando Mercs and the Rebel Legion, and then all of the like spinoffs of that at every convention, because those are the people who are leading the charge and making sure that the focus does stay on helping people. And the fact that people want to help people while putting all this effort into these incredible costumes and props and all of that is just like, it's heaven.
Yeah.
There is something that I feel like you said, because of the community, inherently sort of encourages people getting together and accomplishing things that they might not get together on if they didn't have this other shared passion, or like you said, modern mythology, or almost religion. Star Wars is my religion to some degree, and in the sense that it gives me community in the things that, going to church gives people, whether or not they believe in the thing. I think of like secular Judaism is almost like the most equivalent thing. We believe in the Force, and in some sense, I guess we want to, but it's like, okay, these are my people. We can share this together. And
I like that you brought up secular Judaism, because that I feel like John writes from so many of those themes, specifically Mando.
Yeah.
And that I think all of that just inherently kind of encourages community where otherwise it would be tough to build a community around something, or around a cause. And it doesn't hurt that the main source of those charitable initiatives is a costuming group where you get like a really great excuse to spend a whole bunch of money on a ridiculous costume.
Yeah.
And then go get together with people and then find in that it's actually so much more fulfilling than just getting a bunch of stuff and hoarding it, in the way that like I did when the band first started and I was making a bunch of money. I bought every Star Wars everything. And now it's just in tubs and it's useless to me in a lot of ways. But through the little bit of costuming I've done and hanging out with Mike and all these other dudes and building more community-based things, something like LA Strikes Back feels so much cooler to me because of it, because it's fulfilling and you're helping people, and there's something chemically in our brains that we're getting out of that we don't get out of a lot of other things that we claim to be the most important things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Layers.
Absolutely.
I think and this thing, and I know I saw Justin was watching on here, but the thing that I come back to, we're very lucky to have really great patrons that support us and support this project. And a lot of them are fans of Nick's band and Adam's band and Ryan's band. And this side of things, because that's always kind of been in some ways this outcastness, a found family is kind of what Star Wars has always been about. And I think as a lot of us are adults, right? This is something we've talked about. It's hard to meet friends as an adult that aren't set in a previous part of your life, right?
Yeah.
Of, this is my friend. And so I think for a lot of people, the Star Wars aspect of tapping into who they were as a child and the fact that a lot of us had a connected experience of remembering what the wonder was like to be like, could this actually be happening in a galaxy far, far away?
Yeah.
And this idea of, as Justin will say, all of this is because a couple people decided to build a costume. And when I look between, I know that you're on the Dad Batch podcast to talk about LA Strikes Back, and we have all of these charity initiatives. We have raised, just in between our podcasts of our friends, we've raised with all the projects we've done, like $120,000 to $150,000, which doesn't, to me, the money is the money is a number, but what you're seeing is people who are motivated to change lives that only have been connected because we mutually love this thing together. And that is one of those things where I look at it and I think like that does make Star Wars special in that way, because we understand that the concept of the Force and all these things bring people together. And those are those things that I'm really proud of, to see that actors like yourself have also said, how do we get to be involved in that? Because I'm sure you've met amazing people in this journey of yourself, of being out here. And this is, I have to assume, correct me if I'm wrong, this has been probably one of the most fulfilling things that came from a job that you took.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it goes beyond, it's sort of funny because I the amount of time I actually spent like doing the job of shooting the show is so tiny compared to the experiences that have come from it. And
it's awesome.
I feel so extraordinarily fortunate because it's, there's so many actors who work really, really hard and they do incredible work, and they just, the work is not on a show that has a huge fan base. And so those opportunities don't happen. And I feel like stupidly lucky that, of course, I've always worked hard, and, I did good work to get the job, I guess, and tried to do good work on the show. But like the payoff that I get from it is just like, I never fathomed anything like this. And it feels so good because it is, acting can be incredibly self-centered, and you're forced to look at yourself whether you want to or not, because you are like a product. And you kind of have to make peace with that, and everyone does it in a different way. But it's also like I get so much joy out of the fact that people are so willing to get involved with charitable stuff like this. And like I do, I do at most of the conventions I go to, I raffle off a Funko Pop to raise money for Voices Against Cancer. And it's, I I was like, oh, I'll do it a few times. And I just keep doing it because regardless of how much money we raise, it causes people to want to share their stories about cancer.
Yeah.
It makes it, I think I also see like the relief on people's faces when they've been like spending all this money at the convention and they're like, oh, I can get a $5 raffle ticket and it's going to go to something good. Awesome. And
a little cleanse of conscience right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's better than spending it on a lottery ticket.
Sure.
But it is like that for me is what that's why I love doing the conventions, is because of the totally unexpected relationships that I've gotten to form with people and what I learn from the fandom and what I learn about people's journeys. Because also the thing that is sort of weird about being an actor, especially in film or TV as opposed to theater, where like, you have some contact with the audience, is that people see a lot of you and you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And that I love getting to connect with the audience because that is such an integral part of storytelling to me.
Mhm.
And when I'm doing theater, I get that more immediately.
Right.
And so it feels like it gets me out of my like self-focus in such a necessary way. And the fact that, it doesn't hurt that the fans put me to shame in terms of their costume building skills. I'm like, yeah, I look great on the show, but I didn't make that.
Sure.
I like asked if maybe my pants could fit better and if I could have some gloves that weren't like oven mitts. But other than that, like that's all somebody else's idea.
Right.
What you just said about having direct interaction with fans and it being closer to theater, much different from not going to cons, just being an actor who films things and goes on living their lives.
Yeah.
It sounds more like being in a band in a way.
Yeah.
Because there's you're there with the fans, there's the in-person interaction, and then we always have meet and greets, we always do a VIP thing, we always hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine without that, it would be like being a studio musician in a way. You just kind of record something, you put it out in the world, you watch everyone shit on it on social media, and then you try to emotionally prepare for the next thing that you create.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and the other thing about conventions and being pleasantly surprised that it adds all these other layers to your experience. We were talking recently about Oscar Isaac. Pretty sure Star Wars Celebration in Japan is going to be his first con.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the signing and photo op prices are bonkers.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was at he was training at Juilliard when I was at NYU grad.
Oh.
And I remember seeing him play Macbeth, and he was incredible. I saw him do a couple of shows because one of my good friends from college was in that class.
Mm-hmm.
And that blows my mind now to be like, oh yeah, I remember when I saw Jessica Chastain do I think it was like Love's Labor's Lost or something, some Shakespeare play, and like that group of people just did some big things.
Yeah, that cracks me up to think like I think of the people I was in college with, and I'm like, man, did they do that? Like my friends, you show up to class hungover, and you're like, all right, what are we doing today? Sounds good, all right.
But I mean, the reason I brought that up about Oscar Isaac is I wonder after he does Celebration if he's gonna, you see a high ticket price and you wonder like, okay, how much did they have to offer him to get him there? Because he's never done it probably and doesn't know that he's going to get such a positive experience out of it. And will that change? And will the next time be like, yeah, I'll be there. How much? Yeah, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what, one would hope at least.
It's and it seems like you have, John Boyega is doing C2E2 in Chicago before Celebration. We were kind of hoping that he would, get flown out to do that. But it does kind of show that I think, at a time where I think he was, feeling a certain way about the franchise, he's going to have an amazing experience because the fans have continued beyond the politics of studios. The fans, I hope, as one myself, Emily, that you have felt the love of what people have appreciated, because even when we're saying things like, the costumes, the thing that I do love about Star Wars is that people like Shauna Terpsick and Judah Escalante and Marcus and Luis and all of these people in the costume team that never really in all the way back to John Mallow and all these people in Star Wars, those people generally never got any love for their iconic work. And I think we're at a point now of connectivity and being able to showcase all of the people who have worked on Star Wars. We're trying to bring everybody to the front to say, did you like this part of it? Check out this person right here. And those people generally don't get the love. And I'm proud of that for our community.
Yeah, me too. Well, and I mean, that goes back to what we were saying about talking about Barry and and you know, I feel like people are ready for it not to be like all smoke and mirrors. Like they want to know who's putting the work in.
Yeah, 100%.
And they appreciate that, you know? And they're sure, I meet people occasionally who are like, oh, wait, you mean, and I don't know where they've been living. If at this point they don't know that Pedro's usually not in the suit.
Right.
But there are people I meet who are like, oh no, like they're so disappointed. And I'm like, no, it's actually really cool because you love this character. You know, you love this character. So don't you want to know the people who actually built the character?
Yeah.
And for the most part, like fans are so into that. They want to know. And I think part of that is because there are so many fans maybe who are, you know, builders and artists themselves. And they're like, I want to know who did the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, I've always focused, I've always been more like sort of director and screenwriter focused when I look kind of behind the scenes. And that's kind of the first layer that people see. But as I've gotten more into collecting, and especially once I met Mike and other people who are into making things, that's immediately where I went. Like who was the concept artist who made this prop, who made this, you know, this costume, whatever. And it's attention that is so well deserved. So
and those people too, like I just want to be a part of a team that loves what they're doing. And, you know, people will ask me like, what's your favorite thing you've done? And I'm happy. Like if I'm making a story with people who love it and, you know, hopefully it's some good writing but I don't usually think about like where it's going to go because we have no control over that most of the time. I've been a part of things that are incredible that got no traction. And then a part of things where I'm like, I wonder why people like that. And on this show, especially season 3, because I was there so much more and I saw like how, you know, this is the state of TV making these days is like, how much can we get done in a short amount of time for as little money as possible? And of course, you know, the money's going to the things that make the show look spectacular. But like most of the people that are working the hardest are not the ones that are making like triple, quadruple, or 6-figure or 7-figure salaries.
Right. This is Chris Bartlett making his own costume to wear on the show for hours at a time.
The team that Mike and I don't remember the other guys' names now, but the ones who are Mike's the main puppeteer for Grogu.
The legacy guys for Grogu. Yeah.
And like Mike, when in those episodes where Grogu was in
IG-13.
Thank you. I was like, it's not 11. Which one was it?
I got you.
I wish that like, I'm probably just, I doubt I'm allowed to post. I wish I could post the contraption that he was having to wear, the weight that was on his body day in, day out. Yeah. And he never complained. And he always wanted, because he cares about the craft and he wanted it to look great. And everyone that I worked with on that show, again, I just feel so fortunate because sometimes the more money there is, like going into a project, like the more kind of jaded people are.
Sure.
Everyone in every department on that show worked so hard so that even if special effects are going to make it look even better at the end, like the quality of work going into it is just the highest caliber. And you know, people sometimes ask me too at conventions, they're like, so is it just your voice or are you in the suit? And I'm like, oh no, I'm in the suit. I'm putting in my time in the suit and I want to put in my time in the suit because I want to be this character, you know, I don't want to just like, maybe it's also because I'm a control freak and I want it to be the way I think it should be.
Right.
This is the way.
Exactly.
So I'm glad we organically got to this part of the discussion because I have some kind of nerdy, you know, inside baseball, deep into the weeds kind of questions about production and stuff. Yeah, I'll push up the glasses. So you kind of talked about, the amount of time you're on set in the suit versus just doing ADR, right? Um, is it, aside from the stunts, is it the majority of the time, or does it come down to, like you said, like insurance things or scheduling? Like, what, if you could put a percentage on it, what would it be?
I don't think I'm lying to say that it's me. I mean, look, I don't know the amount of time the armor spends fighting versus
Right.
I am in the suit all the time, unless it is stunt work that I'm not qualified to do, or that they think is too dangerous for me to do. Or similarly with a fight that, someone who's been training for decades is going to look a lot better than me. And I gratefully hand them the reins. I learn all the fights. And JJ, who's been our choreographer the past, he was seasons 2 and 3 and Book of Boba Fett. He is so wonderful about making sure the actors who are playing the characters agree with the way the character fights. And he listens to that input because it's not a separate thing. It's the way this person moves. It's part of their language of expression. And so it needs to feel right. The fact that the armor never picks up a blaster or anything, or a saber, like she's just got her hammer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. I do remember there was one moment we got to the end of shooting season 3. And of course we'd been shooting all out of order, and they were constantly shooting like 2 episodes at once. So like we'd be on one episode on one set and then run over to this other set. And we got to the end and I was like, oh wait, but we never did such and such scene. And I think it was the scene after Ragnar gets rescued and everyone comes back. And up until then, I had done all of my scenes where I said anything, and they had just like so run out of time, and they didn't even ask me. They were like, our AD was like, oh no, we shot that the other day. And I was like, what do you mean? What? Nobody even gave me the option.
Oh, okay.
So you get the full script. They're not just giving you sides for the specific.
Season 3, yeah. Season 1, I didn't know what was going on, and even season 3, I kind of had to advocate for myself and convince them. And it's never the creative people like John and Dave. They want us to have everything. It's the people who are charged with the security of the show. And so I got like a special iPad with the script, and you couldn't print anything from it, and you couldn't. But I was really, really grateful for that, because it's just easier to do your job as an actor when this is how this fits into the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was me in the suit. And then when it wasn't, my helmet goes off to those ladies who are, because they do, like, I know Lauren in season 1, even though we never met until we did a convention together.
Oh, wow.
We didn't get to meet on set or anything. But she had done her due diligence, and she had looked at tape of me to see how I moved, and to make sure that she was trying to treat the character the same way. And I know for a fact that Joanna does that. And, there's a really funny story that Katie tells about how she was trying to like explain to Joanna how Bo-Katan walks, and how she thought it was a lot like stiffer than it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally she had to own up to the fact that she was like really swaying her booty.
Nice.
And so when Joanna got it, she was like, what are you talking about? But they care about it too. And it's not just they're not just going, okay, I get to do this cool move. They want to know how this cool move fits into the journey of the character too.
Yeah.
And they're just incredible. We're really fortunate to have the people that we have.
And as someone with a theater background, there is that transition between theater to screen where, we have a lot of students at the university I teach at that are amazing actors, stage performers, right? And there almost is this like overexpression that you have to, really project yourself to the back of the room, right?
Yeah.
The mask work is the difference of the mask is on. And you do have to be a little bit more expressive to really get, it's the Michael Keaton Batman, like, I'm going to turn my neck. There you go. Yeah. I did it. Is there, in terms of like for you, the mask work and also having a theater background, was there kind of this sense of needing to over enunciate, over express when you put the
No.
mask on?
To the contrary, actually, because she is so minimal.
Yeah.
And so I
Stoic.
really, and also because, you know, I had done mask work before for theater, and I'm about to go do a play in New York. And I'm doing that is not mask work, but I'm doing like a commedia class right now, which is sort of like clowning with masks. And it's very, very physically based. And there's like a lot of, you know, archetypal characters. And so you have like different ways of moving, and the characters like move from different energy sources, but then it's ultimately about comedy, and it's about creating bits and improvising and stuff.
Sure.
So it's fun to be back in that world, but that too is like, it's big. Like these characters, for the most part, express themselves in a big way. And I found with the armor, partly because she is so, I mean, to me, I think it comes down to a matter of trust and patience. I think that's why she's so still. But also when you're on camera, as opposed to being on stage with the audience able to see all of you, every little movement carries so much import.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very precise, especially if the camera's really tight on you.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, I really had to rely on, I mean, one of my favorite times of doing the show was the very beginning, when we were all trying to figure out together, like, okay, what works, what doesn't, how do we communicate as these people? And for me, because I am a much more like, I'm a pretty high octane, fidgety, like person. Like my mom, she means it as such a compliment, but I'm always like, oh no, she'll say to me, like after she sees me in a show, she'll be like, I just love your facial expressions. And I'm like, oh no, that means I'm
yeah, sure. Big eyebrows up and down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, but I really mean it.
Right.
And for her, it was so I mean, it's sort of like a spiritual experience for me to like be inhabiting her, because it requires me to slow down so much, and to trust that what I am thinking and what I am feeling is coming through without trying to show in any way. But then for that reason, it's also so satisfying if she does like have a different, you know, a little stronger, like side helmet, or when she does cut loose. And, you know, that moment in season 1, when we never, ever saw her lose her temper, get aggressive. And she's just sitting there.
She just starts bashing people.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's what we're dealing with. And that makes it even more impressive to see that force when you recognize how the rest of the time she's keeping it all contained.
Yeah.
So for the voice part of it, I'm thinking, you know, you watch behind the scenes stuff, and you from, you know, the original trilogy, and you hear David Prowse's voice coming through the Darth Vader helmet with his British accent, and it's kind of funny. It's all muffled, like, oh, I'm your father. You know, it's like, it's goofy. I imagine now with technology, it's so easy to put a wireless lav mic up in the helmet. Do you guys do that?
Oh, yes.
Are you trying to keep as much on-set dialogue as possible, so there is something you can use? And I imagine it sounds a way in there that might work.
Yes, absolutely. The only reason that they will ever have me change it in ADR is if there's sound interference, or if they've decided to do a rewrite, which, as it turns out, can happen a lot when you've got characters wearing helmets. And I think that they've really decided to use that to their advantage. And it's made the ADR sessions really fun, because they're way more collaborative and creative than they normally are. Normally you go in and you do ADR and you're trying to match the words to your lips moving on the screen. And it can feel so artificial, because you could be doing something that's like in the middle of a really emotional scene, or you're running or something. And so for that reason, they do try to use as much as possible from what they record while we're shooting, because then, you know, you can hear the physical effort, you can hear the natural kind of cadence that comes from however we're moving in the scene.
Right.
And I know, and they do that for Brendan too. And I'm fairly certain that then Pedro listens to that and, you know, then does his own thing with it, but he kind of knows like what happened when we were filming the scene. But yeah, it's so much fun. I mean, I still remember I had an ADR session in season 1 for that very last scene when I send Din Djarin out to, and he's got to help find Grogu's people. And first of all, it was so comical because I was in New York and I was in a studio and Dave and John were on the line and John was doing like sound editing for The Lion King at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Just to be reminded that the man is a magician. And when we filmed the scene, I did not use the word Jedi. I sort of danced around the fact that he was probably a Jedi. And then when they told me that they wanted to put that word in, I was just like, it's so exciting.
I said the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I've been so interested forever how similar or different the experience is doing, you know, working in the helmet and then maybe having to re-record a whole section that maybe has been rewritten, how similar that is to voice acting, say in animation or in video games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we've all seen behind the scenes stuff for the Clone Wars, and it almost looks like they're doing a radio drama. You know, it's in a live room, and they're at a semicircle, and there's a collaborative element there. When it's just you in the booth by yourself, just doing things like you said, if you're basically doing an impression of yourself because you have to match something because there's external noise or whatever, that's one thing. But how would you compare it or contrast it from other voice over work that you've done? You know what I mean? Or is it just very similar in that sense?
Is ADR?
Well, I feel like maybe ADR is a little more like when you're doing an audition.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because especially nowadays when so little of it is in person and you're having to come up with all of the given circumstances and imagine where you are and just put yourself in that place, even though and you know, it could be the thing that like will never cease to annoy me about auditioning for the camera is that you're often in a scene that like when the scene is shot, you're going to see this person from all these different angles and they're moving around and, you know, you could be kissing somebody, you could be shaking somebody. And when you're auditioning, it's like basically this frame here that you see me in, and I can't leave this frame unless I'm like coming or going, but like the camera is not supposed to move and follow you.
Right.
You're just supposed to stay in that frame. And I am very fortunate that I'm married to an actor. And so he gives me someone good to play off of when we're doing the scenes. I mean, his like 12-year-old girl is impeccable.
Nice.
But yeah, you're having to use your imagination in a way that to me is not as fun. Cause I've never wanted to do a one-man show because I don't want to have to be the one generating all of it. I like, no matter where I am in a moment, I like knowing that I can just look at my scene partner and take in what they're doing. And it's automatically going to inspire me to do something that I might not otherwise have done.
So cool.
So, I mean, ADR is its own thing because it's also the thing that I do really enjoy about voice acting on its own is that it really doesn't matter how you're moving. You know, you can do whatever you need to do in the booth to get yourself in the zone. And there's so many auditions I've recorded in like hotel rooms where I was auditioning for a video game. And very often with those, you do the lines and then you have to do like a whole string of like, this is how it would sound if I got shot. This is how it would sound if I got strangled. This is how it was a heavy attack or a light attack. And I'm like, and nobody's ever called the front desk, which is a little alarming to me.
Normal hotel stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. Was it a Marriott? Was it a Hilton? You know what I mean? These things matter, you know?
I won't tell.
We could go on for forever about this stuff. But I do want to get to some patron questions. If you've got a few more minutes, we have just a few.
Like 10 more minutes.
Sweet.
Yeah, great.
Mike, you want to do these or you want me to dig in?
Yeah. Well, why don't you do the first one? And we'll alternate, Adam. Why don't we do this? Let's ADR this together, Seed
We'll take
Pardon.
turns.
Yeah.
This is a great fake question. So is Grogu actually nice in person, or does he just play it that way on screen? Is he a nice guy?
We want to know. We really want to know, Emily.
Do you
This
ever
is from
see
Rogue
Grogu
X
going to conventions?
Rude.
Yo.
Diva.
Flipped it upside down.
Complete diva.
Got
who's
too
out
famous,
there
too
plugging
young.
the show, and who's sitting by the pool?
Yeah, well, question answered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So one of our patrons, Graurock B, says, "What is your favorite medium as a performer? Voice acting, live action, face, mask work, or on the stage?"
From just the experience of doing it, I love theater because it is usually like one uninterrupted journey of a character for an hour or two, and you're usually telling the story in order, and the subtlety that you can find through rehearsal is thrilling to me. I mean, there's the show that you do on opening night is never going to be the same as the show that you do 2 weeks later, or even like the matinee you do is not going to be the same as the evening show, because it has to sort of like hit certain beats every time, but you're a different person every time you come to that, and the audience,
yeah,
and everyone else on stage has had a different day. So I love the feeling of that more than anything else, but I love what can be created with I think episodic like storytelling is my favorite right now, the way that film has sort of I mean, I still love going to the movie theater, but I like seeing what can be done with storytelling in like I don't know, 8-episode season.
Yeah, right. It's 3 movies all smashed into one.
Yeah. I mean, and I love, it's delightful for me to see with something like The Mandalorian, to see I love the experience of working with everyone when we're acting the scenes, but then getting to see what is built on top of that is so cool. I mean, I remember the first episode of season 3. People were like, what was that location? Where were you? And we were at that, on the lake,
the cave. Yeah. Yeah.
And we were on this back lot where they'd like build an artificial pond, and we were surrounded by blue screens. And that was all, true movie magic.
Yeah.
And so I get to watch as a fan, and I don't know what it's going to look like. And I think I enjoy watching The Mandalorian more than I enjoy watching other things that I do, because I can't see my face. So I don't get quite as like,
yeah,
is that how I look?
Yeah.
There's just something weird about, like, I'm one of those actors who I do want to watch myself, because I want to see if what I thought I was doing is what I was doing. And I learned from that, but I can never like get lost in the story when I'm watching me.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah. I've thought about that so much, because people always ask, like friends that know I'm super into Star Wars and know that we have this podcast and know that we've met a handful of people, and like the guitar player for my band, he's like, dude, one of these days you're gonna get to be an extra in Star Wars or something. I know it. It's gonna happen for you. And I'm like, dude, I don't want that. I can't watch Star Wars and see my dumb face. It'll just completely take me out of it.
Yeah, I get that.
It'll demystify everything, and I can't be that. I can't.
Yeah.
Do that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Not that there's a high likelihood of that happening, but if there was a chance, I don't think I would do it.
You never know.
This is
Go ahead, Adam, because we kind of answered. Austin Jarin asked, "What are some of the things that you like and dislike about face characters?" And I think you kind of just answered it. So boom, nailed it. Look at you. Who would have thought?
I'm gonna go down to I'm gonna go down to this last one. Nick Velarde, I want to say, is the pronunciation. Were there any specific characters or even real people that you drew inspiration from when you created the Armorer's personality and accent?
Great question.
Yeah. I mean, the accent, honestly, the accent was sort of an accident. Not an accident, but an afterthought. And it was only because in the audition, which was like the most, I love that my audition was so random and like uneventful. And I was in the room with one person who was like the casting assistant. I had no reason to think this was a big deal. And I'm glad for that. But he said, we're seeing a lot of British actors, so I think you should do, and he knew I could do a British dialect because I've done that in lots of theater, and I'd done it with Lisa in Castlevania. And
yeah, right.
it's a point of pride for me because there's a lot of incredible actors from the UK and from, Australia that come and do American accents, and everyone's fooled. But there's a little bit of a bias the other way around. And I think
100%
people don't think Americans can do a good accent. And my accent is sort of British-ish. Like I did that for the audition. And then when John and Dave said they wanted to keep it, we talked about it as being just something that sort of like heightened her. Like we're not trying to attach her to any region or not even say she's from Britain. She just happens to sound that way.
Sure.
It's almost like transatlantic, but just leaning a little further east.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's also remember that Carrie Fisher had a British accent for about 4 seconds in A New Hope, and then we just decided, you know what? We're gonna just
call
it
proper voice.
Right. I'm gonna stick my finger right in Grand Moff Tarkin's face.
Yeah. So that part of it was sort of accidental, and then I actually, in her physicality, I truly when we were shooting, I looked a lot at Deborah Chow because she is just she was directing, she and Dave were directing the first 2 episodes we shot. And she's just such a calm, authoritative, but patient and like kind of all-seeing presence. And she was right there. I mean, there was when I was thinking about the character in my mind before coming to shoot, I watched like some Kurosawa films and so some of that, like the movement of that slowness, that deliberateness was very helpful. But I feel like the more I try to emulate someone else when I'm speaking as her, the more, and John is so good about this, about helping me keep from going too, like, cause she's her words are often very heightened. She's talking about the songs of eons past, and it could sound very, kind of wooden, I think, and just like presentational. So he's really helpful with trying to calibrate that. And he tells me when it's going too much that way. And then that also is something that we can work on in ADR. So that's helpful.
Yeah, that's super cool. So
it's almost like a lower energy, stoic kind of Shakespearean approach that isn't like region specific or something, but like how one, at least an American brain, would perceive a Shakespearean role to be voiced.
Well, and I've done a lot of Shakespeare, and all of the detailed text work that you have to do to make sure that the thought is being communicated in the midst of all this poetry and these long thoughts, because we don't speak in long thoughts these days. That was really helpful especially when I got that episode for the Book of Boba Fett, where I was basically just like,
amazing,
filling everybody in about what's been going on. And it was very heightened. And so that text work that I have done on Shakespeare came in pretty handy, which is delightful.
If you're now joining us from The Mandalorian season 2, we are catching you up on, and for a lot of people, Deb Chow was the director of the Obi-Wan series, and she also was the Sash Ketter, the X-Wing pilot on the Prison Break episode of Mandalorian season 1. But she's incredible, and it's I love that of the people that you're mentioning as a person that you narrowed in on, that, a director or someone of her body of work, but also her presence affected you. That's so cool. I think that's amazing.
That's awesome. Well, I know you got to get out of here, so we will go ahead and wrap up. Anything else you want to say? Anything LA Strikes Back related, or anything you're working on you want to let people know about before we go?
Well, I mean, if you're in the New York area, come see me in a play this summer. I'm doing it's a Moliere play, but it's a really funny, very contemporary feeling adaptation of it. It's The Imaginary Invalid, and it's a great cast. We did a table read the other day. It's going to be at Red Bull Theater, which is an off-Broadway theater, in May and June. So that's kind of the main thing I'm focused on that's coming up. Waiting to see what happens with some other things and doing some more conventions.
Awesome.
Sweet. Well, we made it all the way through here without asking you any ambush-style questions about things you may or may not be in the future. So we'll just leave it that way.
I may or may not be in everything.
Wow.
You may or may not be the new James Bond. Like, who knows?
Whatever you're thinking, she might be in it. So let's
Or
just
might not.
leave it at that, people. Eat that, internet.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Patrons, of course, thanks for your support. You make this stuff possible. Like, for real, this is not a sales pitch or whatever other kind of bullshit line you want to call it. You make it possible. It's true. Emily, we'll see you not as soon as we would hope because you're not going to be in Japan, but thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Always a good time.
Always a pleasure.
And
Appreciate
until
you
next
guys.
time, you too. May the force be with you. If you enjoy Thank the Maker, you can support us by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, our recording live stream, and more. Our patrons quite literally make Thank the Maker possible.